And as more people streamed into Tahrir Square, others saw them, got emboldened and came out as well. And it all started with a few young people. Precisely because it was so spontaneous, I can't really bring you the leader or leaders of this movement, but I've invited some prominent leaders, activists, who represent many of the groups and the people who were out there on the streets of Egypt for those many days in January, while the world watched with awe and respect. And I am now joined by Walid Rashid, who is a spokesman for the April 6th movement, which was one of the key groups that organized some of the protests in Tahrir Square. By Sarah Abdul Rahman, who is a classic student activist, and she adds a video blogger. Sarah was at the square from day one to the last day. Noor, also a student activist, a law student, who has been very active during the protests as well. And the lawyer to every activist protester who has been involved in these protests, Rajia Omran, who is a human rights activist and a lawyer. So let me just begin by asking Sarah a simple question. How has the revolution fared so far?
I believe that the revolution hasn't really happened yet. It's an uprising so far. The gains of the revolution we haven't really seen. We are now under military rule. The military is completely abusing their powers in terms of military trials, abusing the protesters, and controlling the media. So to me, we are actually planning another protest on the 27th of May.
Noor, when you look at this situation, there are a lot of people who I've met in Egypt who say, well, you know, these people are being too impatient. There is a path, there was a referendum, there is a process that's been laid out. Why are the students, why are the revolutionaries so impatient?
We're in a point of our history where we are rebuilding Egypt. We have removed, or we're trying to remove, the old foundations in order to set new foundations built on ideas of democracy and justice. And we're trying to steer away from all the negatives in the past that we used to accept, and we stayed silent. Hence, because we are in this phase of rebuilding Egypt, all the injustices that Egyptians used to accept before the 25th of January, we cannot accept now.
Rajia, you probably have a closer sense than anybody of to what extent is the martial law, the arbitrary arrest, is still in place? How severe are the injustices even now?
We believe and we know that the fight and the struggle is long. It's going to take time. And despite that, right now, the picture doesn't look great. Yes, there are people being arrested and put on military trials, not just the activists, but regular citizens, you know, who break the curfew or are framed for cases of possession of weapons or, you know,
the number
anything.
I've heard is 10,000 people under military trials.
Yeah, I think it could be a bit less now, but I mean, it is definitely between 5,000 to 10,000. I think nobody really has the statistics. I think the pressure and the campaigns done by the local activists, by some international media on these issues has forced the Supreme Council of Military Forces, the armed forces, to take another look at why are they going to the military trials and to say, okay, maybe we need to take a step back and not put civilians on trial.
Sarah, is there a danger that the Egyptian people, they're going to say, you know what, we've had it. We've had enough of these protests. We want a normal life. The economy is doing badly. We don't need another revolution right now.
Actually, I think that this is already happening. As I mentioned before, the military is using the media to get people to think that there's no security in Egypt, and they're making the people think by certain media messages that the economy is going downhill, not because of anything but these protests. And these protesters and these revolutionaries are the ones responsible for, if you don't have dinner on the table, it's probably the protesters in Tahrir. Mm-hmm. Now, the military is playing a very smart game. I mean, if you spoke to me 2 weeks ago, I would have said, I love the military, and I would have been very happy with our revolution, and very hopeful. But what happened in the past few days is that I realized that the army and the police deliberately ignore hospitals. So ERs, they close. Thugs attack hospitals, they ignore police stations that are being burnt every other day, but then they come to peaceful protesters and they start arresting them. They leave the thugs that attack these protesters, but they concentrate on dispersing and cracking down on peaceful protests.
Waleed, your movement, the April 6th movement, was invited in by the military to talk to them. What is your sense? Do you trust these people that they are trying to preside over a transition to democracy?
To be honest with you, in politicals, there is nothing called the trust or not. That you are telling me something, okay, fine. You can say anything very easy, but what about the actions? Nothing. They keep saying, okay, fine, we will do, but no actions. You are telling me that, okay, fine, there is no military courts, unlike that, and next day there is some guys are arrested and put them in jail, and we don't know anything about them. That I think Raja was searching about some of them for a few days. We don't know actually what is the location of them. We don't know what the number actually of them. So many things are going like that. Here people are saying, according to Sarah, what Sarah, she said, here some people are saying in Egypt that army is red line. Nothing is called red line. Red line, it must be my freedom, my rights. Yeah.
So what is the demand if there is a second set of protests? What is it? The first protests were so successful because there was a very simple, powerful, evocative demand. The end of the Mubarak regime, the end of, Mubarak had to resign. If you gather in Tahrir Square again, what will be the demand that people in Egypt and the world can understand?
Okay. The second set of demonstrations will have specific demands. There are several demands. However, some of the most notable demands are an absolute end to military trials for civilians. If the military is going to rule Egypt, going to rule the civilians, then they abide by the civilian laws. They don't subject us to military laws. Freedom of the media without censorship, without control that is inflicted by several different authorities, mainly.
And again, there is still censorship in Egypt.
That's the thing. There is still censorship.
Let me ask you, will you be there on the 27th?
Yes, I will be there like I've been there in every single protest for the last 10 years.
You will be there?
I will be there.
You will be there?
We'll all meet there.
You will be.
We will be before 27.
We're going down tomorrow.
When we come back, I'm going to ask all four of them what they thought of President Obama's speech, what they think of American foreign policy in general, when we come back.
This is the same regime that supported Mubarak for the last 30 years. This is the same regime that up to this day has not spoken one word about Saudi Arabia simply because they're worried about whether or not gas prices are going to go up tomorrow.